At Cookman Law, we work with a lot of families who have special needs trusts, and we love helping those families provide for their children. One of the questions we get asked most frequently is, what can I buy with a special needs trust? This is actually a great question, and if you work with trusts of any types, this is the type of question you need an answer to. Many adults with special needs rely on SSI, SSDI, Medicare, but those benefits don't cover everything that they need. In order to cover other needs and add to their quality of life, many parents of special needs kids choose to set up a special needs trust. And I'd like to dig in a little bit more into what those trusts can pay for. You might be surprised. So a special needs trust usually says that it's there to provide for a child's special needs. But what are special needs? Is this limited to items that a child might need because of their disability? Like maybe they need a wheelchair or some adaptive eyeglasses or a modified van. Or instead, is it really to provide for and enhance that child's quality of life? Well, there's actually case law in California that addresses this. First, I want to talk about a really awful case that's called Scott versus McDonald that's from 2018. So in this case, there is a parent, a father, who is acting as trustee of his child's special needs trust. And he made payments for many reasonable things like transportation and food and paying for gas and furniture. And the judge said that those things aren't allowed because it's really only supposed to pay for things that are directly associated with that child's disability. And all these other things were peripheral. So they surcharged the father for making all these payments. It was a horrible case, and we were all pretty freaked out as special needs planners in 2018. Well, happily, there was a group of advocates who came together and they got that case depublished. So what that means is, in California, if you have a published case and it's depublished, that means it's no longer law. So Scott v. McDonald is no longer valid law. Phew! Now, recently, a really good case came out, and it's called McGee versus DHCS, which stands for the Department of Healthcare Services. So this is also a California Court of Appeal case, and this was very recent from 2023. So I want to dive in. So in this case, there was a trustee who was managing a special needs trust. And just like Scott v. McDonald, the judge said, well, hold on, the things that the trustee was paying for are too broad. It doesn't just relate to the child's exact special needs. But the California Court of Appeal reversed the lower court's order. And they said something really wonderful. They said that special needs encompasses, and I quote, the very broad range of everything a human being needs in order to live, thrive, and realize his or her potential in life. Isn't that wonderful? So they distinguished this just from basic needs, like the need for food or shelter or things that you need just to survive on. And they defined special needs as being very broad. So now, really, a special needs trust can pay for anything that doesn't interfere with public benefits. And we're so happy about that. The court also said that a court can't second guess what the trustee is paying for as long as the trustee is acting in good faith and they're making reasonable distributions. So they can't say like, hey, I thought that should cost $300 when it actually cost $400. So we're not allowing that because you didn't look around for the best sale. You know, a court is not supposed to do that anymore, which is awesome.
Hey everyone, if you like my mom's video, like and subscribe.
So here's a common question that I often get asked. Can a special needs trust pay for a trip to Disneyland? Well, now the answer is yes, because that's really benefiting the child to live their very best life. It's benefiting their health and their welfare. And I actually have a list of 93 things that a special needs trust can pay for. And this list actually was compiled by attorney Kevin Urbach. Thank you so much, Kevin. And so if you just look at all of these different items, you'll see, wow, a special needs trust can pay for a lot. Also, Mr. Urbach wrote a really good book called Administering the California Special Needs Trusts. And in that, he really breaks down each of the different items that a special needs trust can be used for. Now, there are some things that a special needs trust shouldn't pay for, so I want to mention those briefly. The first thing is the special needs trust is not supposed to distribute cash, because this can interfere with the beneficiary's public benefits that count income. All right, so let's say a beneficiary gets $500 in cash. Well, that will count dollar for dollar against the beneficiary's SSI and Medicare benefits, and we don't want that. But let's say that you have a child who's pretty high functioning and you want them to have some spending money. Well, what do you do then? Well, you can set up an ABLE account for that child if they qualify, and they can be the authorized legal representative of the ABLE account. And I have several videos on ABLE accounts that I'll refer you to because ABLE accounts are awesome. You can also give the beneficiary a credit card with a spending limit, so then they can use that credit card to buy different things. So that's another way to build in more flexibility, even though you're not supposed to distribute cash directly to the beneficiary. You're also not supposed to reimburse the beneficiary for purchases that they make. So how do you buy things? Well, it's the trustee who's supposed to make the purchases directly. So the beneficiary can tell the trustee, hey, I want this thing. And then they'll order it and have it delivered to the beneficiary's home. But the beneficiary is not supposed to go out and buy their own thing and be reimbursed from the special needs trust. Now, if the beneficiary is just receiving SSDI and Medicare, then you might be able to distribute cash from the special needs trust, because those two types of public benefits don't consider income as for their eligibility requirements. And of course, you're not supposed to buy anything illegal or use the money for gambling. I think those things are pretty obvious, but I wanted to say that just in case. And finally, you do have to keep records of all the purchases that you've made, because you could be audited for this. Social Security Administration could come back and say, oh, I want you to show me all the different things that you've bought. And if you don't have a record of it, they could definitely penalize you. Now, I do want to note that distributions from a special needs trust need to follow the terms of the special needs trust. And here's something I've really found problematic. Some special needs trusts have said that you're not supposed to make a distribution that could interfere with, that could reduce or eliminate somebody's public benefits. Well, that's a problem, because there's something, if you're receiving SSI benefits, there's something called ISM deduction, in-kind support and maintenance. And I explain this more in my video, Supplemental Security Income 101. So take a look at that. But in short, an ISM deduction is if somebody else is paying for food or housing for the beneficiary, and so their SSI benefit is reduced by about $330 a month. Well, it might make sense to allow that, to have a special needs trust, which is a third party, pay for the beneficiary's food and housing, maybe pay $2,000 worth every month, and the beneficiary loses $330 a month. They're still coming out ahead like $1,700 a month, which is a win in my book, right? Win. We want the special needs trust to have the flexibility to make those distributions, even if it might reduce or eliminate certain public benefits. And I always put in that flexibility in my special needs trusts. If you have a special needs trust that hasn't been funded yet, I think you should look it over and see, are you allowed to do that? Because we want as much flexibility as possible to make whatever distributions would be the very best for that child. So I hope that this has provided some clarification on what a special needs trust can be used for, given the public benefits that the beneficiary receives and how the trust is drafted. For more on this subject, I encourage you to watch my video, Administering the Special Needs Trust, a checklist, and I'll see you over there.
Hello everyone. If you liked my mom's video, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you all next time.